Okay. I think we are live. So Shabbat Shalom to everyone who's joined us here in the Zoom meeting. And for those who are seeing this on Facebook Live, feel free to click on the link that should be in the top that will bring you to the Zoom meeting if you'd like to be a part of the conversation. Yeah, welcome everyone to this very odd world of ours today. So I don't know about anyone else. I woke up for the first time really this morning, just kind of scared. So I don't know how you all are doing, but right, it comes in waves and it's different every day and different at every moment. So grateful to be together to study something else. I know for me, at least, one of the things that I really take from Jewish history and from this whole thing is that, like, last week's Torah portion was about how we should respond to a public health emergency plague, right? Like when you back out, it seems so long ago. None of us in our living memory have experienced something like this. You got to go back to, what did they say, 1918, right? But Jewish history has. So I don't know. I take some comfort in that. So I thought we would do today. It's the very last portion or portions. It's a multiple portion week. It's the very last set of portions within the book of Exodus. So I thought we would take this as a moment to look at some of my very favorite midrashim from the book of Exodus. So anyone want to try giving us like sorry about that noise? Someone want to try giving us a like 30-second definition of midrash?
I'll go for it.
Go for it.
To my understanding, midrash is a story that reads between the lines of the Torah to illuminate a truth about the event that can help us understand the Torah better.
Nice. I love that definition. Anyone else have something they want to throw in?
It was the one word interpretation, I guess, or not, in its essence, an interpretation.
Yes, certainly a part of the interpretive tradition. Absolutely. So the definition I really like actually comes from a pastor friend of mine, Bill Dole from Peoria. I guess like I've mentioned him before, but today maybe he's with us. Bill, if you're there, say hi. But Bill gave me this definition because we've been studying midrash together, and he said, "Oh, this is like rabbinic fan fiction of the Bible." So if you don't know what fan fiction is, it's like when you really love Star Trek. I really love Star Trek, and you write your own episodes of the series, right? That's how much you love it. And so at some very real level, I think that's what midrash is. It's the ancient rabbis. This is the same group of rabbis who end up writing the Talmud and are referenced in the Talmud. It's them writing like fantasy about biblical figures. Now, it's also absolutely a set of sermons and a set of messages from a moment in time. So we're going to go ahead and look at some midrash. Any thoughts on that before we keep going?
Should we introduce each other, everybody that's here?
Oh, I would love to introduce each other. We've got all sorts of people on here. Ron, you want to start us off and say hi?
Hi, this is Ron Fagerstrom.
And Mike, you want to wave? And I'll call out people, so you can either then say something about yourself or just wave. Paul, Amy Gage, our president, Felice, and Sarah, who shared about midrash, and John, and Phil, and I can't see who that one is. iPhone Steve.
Iris is here.
And Iris, hi Iris, and Tanner.
Hi.
Hi, I just got back from Arizona.
And we're grateful to have you back, though your mother is more grateful than any of the rest of us to have you back. Let me promise you that.
That's extremely
and
true.
Becky just joined from Peoria. Hi, Becky.
Leon just tried to join. He's seeing spinning. So something's going on. He's just
Tell him he can close it and reopen it if he'd like to.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump in with some actual midrash here. I have no audio or video on this machine, says Randy. Okay. Tanner's on it. Okay, let me see how I share my screen here for you. Okay, is everyone seeing this? Do you all see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
And you still see it, right?
yes. God said to
Okay.
Moses.
Okay. So this is a totally, why isn't on that one though? That's an early one. That's because I taught that a couple weeks ago. No, let's start there actually. Someone want to read this for us? Go for it. Just jump in.
God said to Moses, do not be distressed over the first tablets, which contain only the 10 commandments. In the second tablets, I am giving you also halakha, midrash, and agadah.
Okay, let's take those words apart. Anyone want to translate those for us? Or it's more than
I
translate.
know
Go ahead, Tanner.
halacha is Jewish law, but it means something to the effect of walking the line.
Okay, nice. Here, I think we're actually referencing it in that first meeting that we're talking about Jewish law. Midrash we talked about, right? That's what we're going to be studying. And Agadah. What's Agadah? Anyone know this? There's a word many of us know that is the same word as Agadah, which is Haggadah, right? Like a Passover Haggadah. And Agadah at its core just means story. Right. And that's what the Passover Haggadah is it takes you through the story. Okay. So what is the setup here? When is this story supposedly taking place? Right. The other thing to say about Midrash is there's no attempt, and you'll see this as we go, there's no attempt for various Midrashim to live together in some coherent universe. Like coherence is not what the ancient rabbis are about, or maybe contemporary rabbis either sometimes. Sorry, I accidentally had a thing on where people have to be admitted when they want to join. I will turn that off for next time. But that's not at all what Midrash is about, or the ancient rabbis. It's not about coherence. It's about like creating one bubble world that explains the universe in some particular way, and it doesn't have to sit nicely with the Midrash that comes next. So what's the core idea of this Midrash? Anyone want to try to take it apart for us? What's it saying?
Well, it seems to me, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It seems to me it's saying that there's more to this than just what's on the tablet or on the page. That it has deeper.
Nice. Right. This is getting at really the core question that the ancient early rabbis are dealing with, which is that everyone looks at them and they've got this whole theory that there's this whole other set of knowledge that's eventually written down as the Talmud, and no one accepts them. Everyone looks at them as being this fringy group until the temple is destroyed and there's really no other way of living a Jewish life. And so they're inserting themselves into this moment, right? This, and just to sort of put us in the biblical context here, right, there's one set of tablets that's destroyed. Moses comes down, right, in a fit of passion, though we'll look at that a little later too, destroys these tablets. I was thinking of the scene from History of the World, part one, part two. Is it called part two? It's called part two, right?
No, it's History of the World Part 1.
It is part one that they go, okay, yeah, I just remember the shtick was there, right? Where he comes down from Sinai, it's Mel Brooks, and says, I present you these 15 and drops 5, these 10 commandments. But we do get this second version in the Torah of this giving of the commandments, right? Destroyed after the golden calf and then given again. So the rabbis insert themselves into this moment, and they say that the difference when the second one is given is that all of these oral traditions meaning the oral traditions that they are going to be sharing that give them their sort of authenticity and legitimacy, that all of them are also to be found in this original revelation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Okay, that's really just our meta text here that sort of introduces the concept of everything else that's about to follow. So let's look at some more texts. And some of these I picked because I think they have a really strong message, and some of these I picked just because I think they're really kind of interesting. Okay, someone want to read this?
If an Egyptian and an Israelite were in one house.
Will you read the Torah verse that it's coming from at the top first?
Sure. In vessels of wood, in vessels of stone.
Okay, so
chapter 7, verse 19.
Okay, so just to give us the setting here, we're talking about the 10 plagues, right? Passover is coming. Such a different moment to talk about plagues, right? And one of the plagues is that the water turns to blood. So this is an imagining of that plague. So keep reading. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay. If an Egyptian and an Israelite were in one house where there was a barrel full of water, and the Egyptian went to fill a pitcher, they would discover that it contained blood. But the Israelite would drink water from the same barrel. If the Egyptian said to him, "Draw me some water with your own hand," and the Israelite gave it to them, it became blood. Even if they said to him, "Let us both drink from one vessel," the Israelite would drink water, but the Egyptian would drink blood. Only when they had bought the water from the Israelite for money was the Egyptian able to drink water, and in this way the Israelites became rich.
Okay, what do we see in this text? Who has a thought? Who has a reaction?
You can always say there's a cost for living a clean life.
Okay.
Or a righteous life.
Amy, I see that you're talking, but you're muted. You got to unmute yourself. Nope, still can't hear you. Now we can hear you.
Now? Oh, okay. I think that only when you actually help somebody, you do something good for them, you help them, then you can then you can be cared for yourself. Does that make sense? So like that last sentence makes me think that's the only way that they could actually be cared for is if they care for the other person.
Oh, I love that. So I just want to contextualize that a little bit. I would say that what you did is called a Hasidic move. So the Hasids, it's really sort of in some ways, it's a radicalizing egalitarian movement, at least in its origins. Not so much today. Egalitarian just for its moment. Again, not so much as we would compare it today. But the real Hasidic move is to take things which are external and political and instead move them within ourselves. Right? Be about human dynamics or relational dynamics, or even more often what we might call kind of core psychology and ethics. So beautiful. I love that. Who else has another read on this text?
I've got a question to ask about that.
Yeah.
Again, when you say caring to me is like tikkun olam, where you just do it out of the goodness of your heart. This is doing the goodness out of your wallet, or for a price again.
Okay.
But is it? Because to me, there's no way that anybody would get rich off doing this in this short period of time. So is richness mean the quality of life? I don't understand the bought part, which is what you brought up, but could the richness be you assisting or helping people with it? I'm trying to pull something here.
Yeah. So again, making a little bit of a Hasidic move there. So I think in its original context, actually, I think that the buying is the key here. That this midrash in its origins is probably an apologetic for, right? There's this question of when we get into the wilderness and we're building all of these things, right? There's the gold to cover the whatever with, and the curtains and the beautiful fabric and the dolphin skins. Dolphin skins always show up. By the way, that's probably one of the phrases in the Torah that we just don't know what to translate or what it actually means. So we've decided on it being dolphin skins. But there's an apologetic here about where did all that money come from? And when we took the money from the Egyptians when we were fleeing, was it illegitimate, right? Were we forcing them to give us money? Was it fundamentally theft, and are we thieves? There was an attempt by some, I'm sure it was public theater as much as anything else, but a handful of Egyptians who tried to sue in the world court about 20 years ago, it was in the W era, I don't remember when, against Israel for damages of all of the wealth that we stole when we fled from Egypt. Right? Like the whole thing's absurd, right? But that's always been one of the pieces that there was a sense from the rabbis that we needed to be wary of. Like, had we done the moral thing when we took this wealth out of Egypt? And so this imagines...
This is from his home. This is the class that he normally teaches.
Oh, hi, Nancy. We can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
You can mute yourself. I totally lost my train of thought here. Whatever. Okay, so I think there's another interesting read on this text today that's totally different about anti-Semitism. Anyone see that in here?
Does anybody see anti-Semitism in here?
I think this predates the sort of anti-Semitic tropes that we end up seeing, or the Jews end up experiencing for most of the last 2,000 years. But I think there's just a really interesting dynamic here. Anyone want to take that apart, walk through it?
Anybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. I'm sorry. I don't have anything to add right now. I just want to make sure I could be heard.
We can hear you.
Immediately on. Good.
Just hearing your voice is something to add. Okay. Anyone want to take a shot at taking this apart?
I think I might have something.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
So in this situation, the protection for the Israelites where they have clean water, it keeps them safe from the Egyptians being able to misuse them. We see here the Egyptian said to him, draw me some water with your own hand. That could be really misused if the Israelites have the only source of clean water and they could be bullied into giving it to the Egyptians. And because of divine protection, only the Israelites have the clean water, even if it's taken by force or just, coerced or asked for, it turns into blood. And I can see where it reminds me of sort of like the restrictions on Jews historically, like in ghettos and stuff like that, where you can't own land and you can't do all these different jobs. And then, by working hard and some blessing by God, you succeed anyways. And now it's, why is it that, you control this sector? Why is it that, you're in charge of banking? Well, that was the only job you let us do.
So that's very much the dynamic that I see here too, right? The sense that like Jews have so often in Jewish history been forced
anyways. And now it's,
Was someone talking? I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Control this sector, why is it that, you're in charge of banking? Well, that was the only job you let us do.
Oh, I think maybe I'm getting Sarah back. That's the dynamic that I see here too. Yep. Someone is echoing really badly, so I am going to go ahead and go through and everyone. So if you, someone talking, I'm sorry, please go ahead. I'm hearing my cell phone echo. Yep. It was Sarah Hannah Pats. I muted you just as a heads up. We were getting echo from yours. So if you want to say something, just go ahead and unmute yourself. Someone is echoing really badly, so I am going to go ahead and go through everyone. Yep. Thank you, Sarah. If you can leave that muted and except when you're talking. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at another midrash. I gotta move.
Can we go back to that one a second?
Sure. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I didn't infer from that there was anything that the Israelites did to earn money and become rich. It was just the hand of God leading it to go that way.
Yeah. And that was kind of what I was getting at with the anti-Semitism piece. How often Jews have been put in a situation where there wasn't a choice about what we were doing, and then we are blamed for being in that situation.
Okay.
Right. And it's not just anti-Semitism that works that way, of course, right? Like, this is how misogyny works. This is how homophobia works, and transphobia works, and racism works. And,
thank you.
Okay, let's look at another text. This text, I don't know what to do with other than just like, I kind of love it. I'm not sure there's some deeper meaning here, but someone want to read this for us?
The plagues which God brought upon the Egyptians also had the effect of establishing peace amongst them. How was this?
Hold on, backing up. The verse that we had is, behold, I will smite all your borders with frogs, right? And we're keying in on the word borders here, as you'll see. So keep going, Ron.
The plagues which God brought upon the Egyptians also had the effect of establishing peace amongst them. How was this? There was a dispute between the Ethiopians and the Egyptians. The latter said, our borders extend till here, whilst the former claimed, it got real small on me.
Oops, sorry, I clicked a button. Yep.
Our borders extend, while the former claimed our borders extend to here. But when the frogs came, the dispute was resolved, for the plague affected only Egyptian territory, and thus the Ethiopians knew what was not theirs.
Right, like, I don't know what this deeper meaning of this midrash is, but I love this image that suggests that, like, the frogs, it says on the borders, and it said it afflicted Egypt, so we immediately knew what the border between Egypt and Ethiopia was, because the frog plague went to there and no further. Again, I don't know what to do with this. I just always think it's kind of funny.
So therefore it had to be true.
What'd you say, John? You cut out there.
And that the source of this happening was God, so it's got to be true.
What? I'm not sure I follow what you are saying there.
Well, never mind. That's okay.
The frogs were sent by God.
Yes.
Oh, got it. So the borders, therefore, like, who can question those borders? Yeah. Yeah. Right. I just love the sort of imagination here.
I do
okay,
enjoy.
Someone just say something?
Yeah. I was saying that I enjoy the idea that, you know, when we look back, we don't let God's actions be one thing. Yeah, he pulled us out of Egypt, but he also fixed the borders, he stopped a war, all in one action. I enjoy the things the double actions.
Nice.
Go
ahead.
I was going to say, I love how, in a roundabout way, the rabbis also want Egypt to benefit.
Huh.
You know, like, this ends up being a net positive for everyone. Like I said, with a double action, you know, it's not all bad. There is a bright side to this. You know, God isn't heartless.
And one of the interesting things that I think speaks to what Sarah's saying here too is that there was a vibrant and rich, in all the meanings we think of with that word, Egyptian Jewish community during the time of the rabbis. In fact, there's some evidence that, like, the Egyptians in Alexandria, Egyptian Jews, right? And this is a Greek Egyptian Jewish community, that they build their own temple there that's probably grander than the temple in Jerusalem, that there's just all sorts of vibrancy to that life. So yeah, they're not always so interested in trashing Egypt either, because, you know, they kind of are happy in Egypt pretty frequently. Things go pretty bad about the year 100 or so. And of course, there are other moments that are pretty rough. But okay, let's look at this next text, another midrash from Mechilta. Someone want to read this?
When Moshe asked for Zipporah's hand in marriage, Yitro made a condition.
Okay. So pausing just to look at the setup, of course, that Zipporah, like, has no role in this, right?
Right.
Just has no agency in this. That when Moses wants to get engaged to Zipporah, he goes to Zipporah's dad. Okay, let's keep going.
He said, Your first child must be allowed to worship Avodah Zarah, idolatry.
Okay, and that's about the worst
thing that
category of wrongdoing that the rabbis can imagine.
Yep. And the children that follow, you may raise in the name of heaven. Moshe accepted, and Yitro made him swear that he would fulfill his promise. This is why the angel came to kill Moshe.
Okay, so that ending is sort of the textual jump off that this is starting from, right? There is this odd moment in the Torah where an angel appears in the middle of sort of nowhere to kill Moses. And so
that? I'm sorry, I don't know that quote where the angel.
Oh, and I don't remember what verse. I don't remember where that is.
I don't know either.
And
I'm not Rabbi Memavshin. That's my wife.
Yep. But so ask her. Yeah. So what? Hold on, going backwards. And the children. I totally forgot my train of thought, so I'm just going to jump back into a different train of thought, or maybe it's the same one. I don't know. So we have this odd setup that Yitro is the Midianite high priest, meaning we know that he's not Jewish, right? So he's almost definitionally a worshiper of all of these idols. Now that's really problematic to the later rabbis in a way that it just is not problematic to the Torah text itself, right? If you look at the Torah text itself, the Torah is not a text written by monotheists, right? You don't find monotheism within the Torah. You find some sort of variations on what we call monolatry or henotheism, which is like you've got a main squeeze God, but you can still date around a little bit. That's kind of the idea, right? And you find this all over. The first commandment of the 10 commandments is you shall have no other gods before me, right? Like, again, I got to be your main squeeze. You can date around. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, who is like you amongst the gods, Adonai. This is more what I think of as like playground theology. My God can beat up your God kind of stuff. So what we certainly don't have, though, is monotheism. And so the Torah itself isn't terribly bothered by the notion that Moses' father-in-law would be a priest of Midian. On the other hand, the later rabbis who are interpreting this are very much invested in interpreting the Torah through a lens of monotheism. And so they are really bothered by Yitro. And they don't know what to do with him. And there's all sorts of apologetics. In one version, Yitro turns into a convert, and like there's all sorts of ways of approaching this and their discomfort with it. So I want to suggest that this is one of them. But it's a radical value, I think, that emerges from this text, right? Because this is not one of the apologetics where Yitro is turned into a Jew. This is a text instead where Yitro insists, is it Yitro or is it Moses who insists? Oop, I'm sorry, I just clicked the back button. Yitro insists your first child must be allowed to worship Avodah Zarah, which is another way of saying what? What's the value that we see here? I want to try to extract that. Oop. Randy, if you're trying to talk, you got to unmute yourself. Scott has a egg shaker there. Okay, I haven't heard from anyone. So join in if you, or jump in if you do unmute yourself and want to say something. But right, like the value I see here, and it's one that to me is appropriate for approaching Passover, is that it's not about having a doxology. It's not about having a statement of faith and saying, this is what I believe. That fundamentally the value that emerges here is that we need to be open to questioning and exploration, even of the most core things to our tradition. Right? Because what could be more radical, I think, than suggesting that Moses's own child would not be raised Jewish and that that would be a good thing, right? A good thing because it would teach that child the value of intellectual exploration and questioning rather than simple answers from the past.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So I have two questions actually. So could this be about respect for other people's thoughts and beliefs?
Nice. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't remember when Mechilta is written, but it might be interesting. Like, almost certainly, it's written in the context of Jews living amongst non-Jews.
Okay, I love it. And then the second question is, if it's all about that, then why did the angel come to kill him?
Then why did the angel come to kill him? Because the angel was mad that Moses entered into this deal.
So the lesson is not that you shouldn't do it because the angel will come to kill you?
That's an interesting takeaway from this. I never really paid attention to that part of the ending of this midrash before. I always do the first part. Yeah. Okay. I think that's a fair read of this text also. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how angels work, but it was to me that the angel didn't decide to come and do this, that the angel was instructed to do this.
Okay. Yeah. One of the notions that you find is that angels don't have free will. Remember, the word angel technically in Hebrew is just the word messenger. The other thing to say is that in Jewish mythology and folklore, angels are not the angels of sort of the Christian world, which are these do-gooders. Angels are frequently mischievous and problematic. And, the reason that people don't say the second line of the Shema out loud is because the angels will hear you and mess with you. The reason, one of the explanations given for why the mourner's Kaddish is said in Aramaic and not in Hebrew, the real answer, by the way, is just that it was written in a time when everyone spoke Aramaic. But one of the explanations given is that the angels only speak Hebrew, so they can't mess with the mourner's Kaddish because they don't understand it. Right, again, just to give you like a sense of what Judaism traditionally does with angels. The whole Shalom Aleichem prayer, right, the first verse is Shalom Aleichem, welcome angels, Boachem l'shalom, we ask them to come, Baruchuni l'shalom, we ask them to bless us, and the final verse, though, is Setechem l'shalom, like, and go in peace, because we know if you stick around, you're going to cause trouble. Okay, any last thoughts on this text before we keep going? Okay, let's see what else we got here. Oh, yeah, we kind of did that one on its own. We don't need to look at that. This one's interesting, but let's see what else we can do. Okay. This one. I think this is a text many of us probably have seen before. This is a pretty famous midrash. I think it is a much darker and more cynical midrash than we normally give it credit for. I think this is a story that's normally used almost as a throwaway, like at graduations and stuff. But I think there's a different read to it also. Okay, someone want to read this for us? It's starting with the italics, the verses from the Torah it's based on.
All the people answered together and said, all that God has spoken, we will do.
Okay, so this is setting up the scene, and it's at the moment of the revelation at Mount Sinai, right? The moment when Jewish tradition says the Torah is given.
Said God to them, I required guarantors.
Okay, so God is like, in this imagining of the Midrash, right? God's having second thoughts, like about to go through with this of giving the Torah, but then not so certain that this is a good idea. So we need co-signers on the loan.
Said the people of Israel, the heaven and the earth shall be our guarantors. Said God, they won't last forever.
Okay, right? Like, so first of all, I think this is a really powerful line of people living 2,000 years ago, looking at the world and saying, if we trash this world, it won't be here forever. That like, even the heavens and the earth aren't a good guarantor because we know that they can be destroyed. Okay.
Said they, our ancestors will guarantee it. Said somebody with initials.
HaKodesh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, the Holy Blessed One. It's a classic just kind of name for God that's given in the Midrash.
They are busy.
So the other way of translating that is that their merit has already been used. Right? Like, so the next response of the Israelites is, no, you should give it to us because like we have this covenant thing, right? And maybe they're talking about sort of classical covenantal Jewish language, Abraham, Isaac, Sarah, Rebecca, Rivka, so on and so forth, right? Like, but I think you can also look at this just about the previous generations, right? We don't have to go into sort of these mythological frames. We can stick with literally our previous generations and say, like, isn't what they did enough? And the answer is no, what they did was for that moment. And maybe it wasn't enough for that moment. God knows when we look at our world, right? This is not the world we should be living in, not the world we should have created, as Rabbi Susan says. Okay.
Said they, our children will guarantee it. Said God, these are excellent guarantors.
Okay, so it's this final line that turns this so often into a cliche that's like given at a high school graduation or a confirmation. That'd probably be the classic line for this, right? Right, and look at how wonderful these kids are. Go on. I'm sure I've used this text for that.
Soccer players.
What'd you say?
Nothing. I'm sorry.
But I actually think that this is a much more cynical text than that, because there's an acknowledgement that the past wasn't enough. There's an acknowledgement that our world isn't the place it should be and probably won't be here forever. And that we signed our kids up for this, right? Like, we forced our kids to co-sign the loan that we're taking out, right? I mean, this is one of the critiques you hear generationally, right? That previous generations gave themselves tax breaks, and now look at the condition that young people find themselves in, or healthcare systems, or right? There's all sorts of pieces to this. The environment, right? Literally, we are signing the next generation up for the results of the emissions that we are releasing right now, So that's how I read this text. I think it's a much darker, much more cynical text than we often give it credit for.
I do
Okay,
have a
thoughts?
question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I do have a question here. What choice do the Jews have? Or the Israelis have? They have no choice. God says, guarantee it. Yeah, all right, you guarantee it, but they have no choice about the future at all. God's given them no choice about the future. They guarantee that they will follow these laws, and that's it.
So right, well,
there's no choice, and yet there's a feeling of choice here.
So there's two radically different interpretations, and they're both midrash and on that exact question. One of them is this classic midrash that many of us have encountered before, where the Torah is first offered to all of these different peoples, and only eventually after everyone else says no is the Torah offered to us. Right? Have people heard this before?
Yes.
Right. It's actually a pretty funny midrash. It's, I mean, like political commentary for its moment, because it describes the Torah being offered to all of the neighbors of ancient Israel. And they like go to the Moabites, who are said to be descended from Lot and one of his daughters. And the Moabites get offered the Torah, and they say, well, what's in the Torah? And God says, well, you're not allowed to have sexual immorality or incest. And the Moabites go back and say, no, this is like, that's the core of our culture. We can't accept the Torah. So like it goes around, and it's like, we would tell the same joke about Kentucky or something. Maybe other people would tell the same joke about Missouri. I think that's probably true. But that's the original context. But that's one of the approaches that we get to this question of choice. The other one is the other classic midrash, and it's radically in the opposite direction. And this is actually the version of the story that makes its way into the Quran, because the Muslim text is written in the context that midrash is being written in. And so the Quran is primarily using the midrashic tradition, not the biblical tradition, to tell the biblical story. That's a separate thing. But the other version of the same choice is that the Jews are right. The Hebrew says right across from the mountain, but it could technically mean underneath the mountain. And the midrash imagines that at the moment of giving, the same moment that we're imagining this midrash here, that God picks up the mountain and holds it over the Jewish people and says, either accept the Torah or I drop the mountain, right? Which is radically separate and actually is used in some of the traditions to say the covenant is not binding because clearly it was entered into under duress. Okay. It's 9:43. I think we're going to call it a wrap now, primarily because I have to go get ready and set up for family services. So we're going to do family services at 10 o'clock, 10 to 10:25 or so. And then regular Shabbat morning services are going to start at 10:30 and go from 10:30 to 11:30.
Hey, Daniel, are they all on the same Zoom channel?
No, nothing else is going to be on Zoom. Everything else is going to be on Facebook Live, or if you go to the website and click on the live stream button, this is new as of yesterday, it'll bring you to somewhere where you don't have to be on Facebook in order to see the live stream. So feel free to do that.
You know, Scott brings up a good point, though, because on the site, there's not a distinction in the links. And so I took the fake last night for the Shabbat service thinking it was going to be streamed, and I never saw anything. And then I realized it was actually Facebook and Zoom, I guess.
So it was not Zoom, it was just Facebook, but it also streams to Mixer. There's a link on the site. If you click on the main page on live stream now, this has changed. It's different than it was even at the beginning of services last night.
Okay.
I'm making this stuff up every hour as
I figured as much. That was just a suggestion on my part.
But click on live stream from the main page, or if you click on the little live stream button at the top, and then you'll see there's now an option for live stream and an option for Facebook Live. If you click on the live stream one, it'll bring you to somewhere you don't have to sign in. You don't have to any of that. But if you do chat in the one that it brings you to, it'll still direct it to whoever's leading services.
Hey, Daniel, can you tell everybody about Kulanu Shabbat?
Yes. So next Shabbat was going to be Shabbat Kulanu, the one where last month we all got around in a circle and did a big, everyone close to each other, highly musical thing, which social distancing. But Kulanu really just means all of us. That's what the word means. So we're going to try, we'll see, hopefully the technology plays nicely. We're going to try next Friday night to do a live stream with all of the rabbis from our houses. So we're going to try to bring everyone together, and we'll probably maybe create a meeting for congregants, or I don't know how we're going to make this work, but we want to find something joyous and all of us to be together.
6 o'clock. At 6
o'clock next Friday. Okay, I am going to go ahead.